In the rugged hills of Judea, where the earth rose in waves of stone and scrub, the village of Bethzur nestled like a jewel in a crown. Its whitewashed houses clung to slopes, their roofs kissed by dawn's first light, and its fields bloomed with barley and figs. Beyond the village, the hills stretched wild, dotted with olive trees and grazed by flocks of sheep, their bleats a constant song. Here lived Eli, a shepherd of 30, known for his steady hand and unyielding heart. Eli was lean, his skin bronzed by sun, his eyes sharp as flint. His tunic, patched but clean, bore the dust of countless treks, and his staff, carved from cedar, was both guide and guard. Eli's flock of 100 sheep was his life, each animal known by name: Miriam, swift and stubborn; Jonah, gentle and slow; Leah, with her crooked ear. He led them to green pastures, guarded them from wolves, and carried lambs when they tired. To Eli, his sheep were family, their trust a sacred bond. Bethzur revered Eli, not for wealth but for care. He shared wool with widows, gave lambs to the poor, and taught children to whistle like larks. His faith, rooted in the Torah, saw God as a shepherd, guiding the lost. "The Lord watches his flock," he'd say, his voice warm, "and none are forgotten." His best friend, Amos, a potter with a quick laugh, teased him. "You love those sheep more than people, Eli." Eli grinned. Sheep don't argue. One spring morning, as dew clung to the grass, Eli led his flock to a high pasture, its slopes lush from winter rains. The village bustled below, preparing for a festival, but Eli's world was the hills. He counted his sheep, his lips moving, 98, 99, 100. Satisfied, he settled on a rock, his eyes scanning for danger. The sun climbed, the air sweet with thyme, and the flock grazed, their bells tinkling. As noon approached, Eli counted again, a habit born of care. 98, 99. His heart stopped. One was missing. He scanned the flock, calling names, his voice sharp. Leah. Her crooked ear was gone. Panic rose, but Eli's resolve hardened. Leah, timid and prone to wander, was out there alone. The hills hid wolves, cliffs, and thorns. "I'll find her," he vowed, his staff in hand. He turned to a young shepherd, Micah, grazing nearby. "Watch my flock," Eli said, his tone firm. "Keep them here." Micah nodded, wide-eyed. Eli scanned the hills, his eyes tracing paths Leah might take, a ravine, a thicket, a distant ridge. With a prayer, "Lord, guide me," he set out, the village fading, the wilds opening before him. Eli's steps were swift, his staff tapping stone, his eyes darting for signs: a hoof print, a tuft of wool, a broken twig. The hills were a maze, their paths winding through gnarled oaks and jagged rocks. Leah's timid nature worried him. She'd stray far, scared by a shadow or a hawk's cry. "Hold on, little one," he muttered, his breath quickening. He climbed a ridge, the sun hot on his neck, and scanned the valley below. Nothing but scrub and stone, the wind carrying only silence. Eli's heart sank, but his faith held. "The Lord sees her," he told himself, recalling psalms of God's care. He descended into a ravine, its walls steep, its floor thick with thorns. He called Leah, his voice echoing unanswered. Memories stirred, Leah as a lamb, nuzzling his hand, her eyes trusting. Eli had nursed her through sickness, carrying her when she weakened. "You're mine," he'd whispered then, and now that bond drove him. He pushed through thorns, his tunic tearing, his hands scratched. A wolf's howl pierced the air, distant but chilling. Eli gripped his staff tighter, his pace quickening. At a stream, he found a hoof print, small and fresh, Leah's. Hope surged. He followed the bank, its mud soft, her tracks clear. They led to a thicket, dense and dark, its branches tangled. Eli crouched, peering inside. A faint bleat reached him, weak but alive. "Leah," he called, crawling through, ignoring the thorns clawing his skin. The bleat grew louder, guiding him. Inside, the thicket was a cage, its air heavy. Leah stood trembling, her leg caught in roots, her wool snagged. Her eyes, wide with fear, met Eli's, and she bleated, softer now. "I'm here," Eli said, his voice soothing. He knelt, his hands gentle, freeing her leg, untangling her wool. Leah shook, but his touch calmed her. "You're safe," he whispered, lifting her, her weight light but precious. Eli emerged, Leah in his arms, her heart beating against his. The sun dipped, casting long shadows, but joy eclipsed his fatigue. "Thank you, Lord," he prayed, his eyes wet. The hills, once menacing, now felt like home. He bandaged Leah's leg with cloth from his satchel, gave her water, and started back, his steps lighter, his mission clear. The journey back was no less daunting. The hills darkened, clouds gathering, the air heavy with coming rain. Eli held Leah close, her warmth a comfort, but the path was treacherous. Rocks shifted underfoot, and dusk hid dangers, wolves, bandits, cliffs. Eli's eyes scanned, his staff ready, his faith his shield. A growl stopped him low and close. 2 wolves crept from a ridge, their eyes glinting, drawn by Leah's scent. Eli's heart raced, but he stood tall, Leah trembling in his arms. "Stay back," he shouted, raising his staff, his voice a thunder. The wolves circled, testing him. Eli prayed, "Lord, protect us," and swung his staff, striking the ground, the sound sharp. One wolf lunged, teeth bared. Eli sidestepped, his staff cracking its flank. The wolf yelped, retreating, and the other hesitated, then fled. Eli stood firm, his breath ragged, Leah safe. "We're not done yet," he told her, his voice steady, and pressed on, the wolves' howls fading. Rain began, soft at first, then heavy, turning paths to mud. Eli slipped, catching himself, Leah bleeding in protest. He found shelter under an overhang, its stone cold but dry. He checked Leah's leg, her eyes calmer now, and shared his bread, her nibbling a small victory. "We'll make it," he said, his resolve iron. The storm passed, stars breaking through. Eli resumed, the flock's pasture distant but calling. He sang psalms, his voice low, soothing Leah and himself. "The Lord is my shepherd," he sang, the words a light in the dark. Memories of Beth Zur, Amos' laughter, the festival's joy, urged him on. The flock needed him, and Leah's return would be his gift. As dawn neared, the pasture appeared, its grass silver with dew. Micah stood watch, the flock grazing, their bells a welcome. Eli's heart lifted, his fatigue forgotten. He was almost home, Leah safe, his quest nearly done. Eli crested the hill, Leah in his arms, the flock a sea of wool below. Micah ran to him, his face alight. "You found her," he cried, seeing Leah's crooked ear. Eli nodded, his smile weary but wide. "She's tough," he said, setting Leah down, her legs wobbly but eager. She bleated, joining the flock, Miriam nuzzling her, Jonah grazing nearby. Eli counted, 99, 100. The flock was whole, his heart full. He knelt, thanking God, his hands on the earth. "You guided me," he prayed, the hills silent witnesses. Micah watched, awed. "You risked everything for 1 sheep," he said. Eli shrugged. "One matters as much as 99. The sun rose, bathing the pasture in gold. Eli checked each sheep, his hands gentle, his eyes keen. The flock was unharmed, Micah's care faithful. "Good work," Eli told him, clapping his shoulder. Micah beamed, his youth eager for Eli's wisdom. "Will you teach me?" he asked. Eli nodded. "Stay close, and you'll learn." Beth Zur stirred below, the festival nearing, its music faint. Eli longed to return, to share Leah's rescue, but the flock came first. He led them to a stream, their thirst sated, their bells a chorus. Leah grazed, her leg healing, her trust in Eli unbroken. "You're home," he whispered, his heart a hearth. As noon approached, Amos climbed the hill, his potter's hands dusty, his eyes searching. "Eli," he called, seeing the flock. He embraced his friend, his laugh booming. "Micah said you went after a sheep. Found her?" Eli pointed to Leah, grazing calmly. "She was worth it," he said. Amos nodded, his eyes warm. "You're a fool, but a good one." Amos urged Eli to join the festival, but Eli hesitated, his duty to the flock strong. "Go," Micah said, his voice firm. "I'll watch them." Eli relented, trusting the boy, and followed Amos, Leah's bleat echoing behind him. The village awaited, its joy a mirror of his own. Beth Zur glowed with festival light, its streets alive with song and dance. Garlands hung from roofs, lamps flickered, and tables brimmed with bread, wine, and roasted lamb. Villagers wore their finest, children chased fireflies, and elders shared stories of God's grace. Eli entered, his tunic torn, his face weary but his heart alight. Amos led him to the square, where a fire burned, its warmth a welcome. "Tell them," Amos said, his grin wide. Eli hesitated, shy of praise, but the villagers gathered, their eyes curious. Eli found his lost sheep, Amos announced, his voice carrying. Cheers rose, cups raised, and Eli blushed, his hand on his staff. A widow, Hannah, pressed bread into his hands. "You're God's shepherd," she said, her eyes wet. Children tugged his tunic, begging for the tale. Eli relented, his voice steady, recounting the search, the thorns, the wolves, Leah's bleat. The crowd hushed, drawn by his care, his faith aflame. "One sheep matters," he said, "as God seeks each of us." The village roared, their joy a tide. Musicians played, dancers spun, and Eli was swept into the feast, his fatigue fading. He ate, laughed, and danced, his heart one with Beth Zur. Amos clapped his back. "You've taught us tonight," he said. Eli shook his head. "God taught me." As midnight neared, Eli slipped away, returning to the flock. Micah slept by the pasture, the sheep safe, their bells soft. Eli counted, 100, Leah among them. He sat, the stars above, his heart full. The festival's music drifted, but the hills were his sanctuary, the flock his call. Days passed, the festival's joy lingering. Eli resumed his routine, leading the flock, his eyes keener, his heart deeper. Leah stayed close, her trust a gift, her leg healed. Villagers visited, bringing bread or wool, their respect grown. "You're a parable," Hannah said, her smile warm. Eli laughed. "I'm just a shepherd." Micah shadowed him, eager to learn. Eli taught him how to read tracks, come a lamb, wield a staff. "It's not just skill," Eli said, "but love. Each sheep is yours." Micah nodded, his youth burning with purpose. "Like God loves us?" he asked. Eli smiled. "Exactly." Beth-zur changed. Villagers sought the lost, stray children, broken families, forgotten neighbors. Hannah fed orphans, Amos gave pots to the poor, and Micah searched for a lost goat, echoing Eli's quest. The parable took root, its truth a seed. Eli's sheep, they called it, their laughter fond. Eli's faith grew, his prayers longer. He saw God in the hills, the flock, the village. "You seek us," he prayed, "no matter how far we stray." Memories of Leah's rescue stirred, her fear, his relief, God's hand. He shared the tale in the synagogue, his voice humble, the elders nodding. "You've shown us God's heart," one said. One evening, Amos joined Eli by the flock, the sky purple with dusk. "You've changed us," Amos said, his voice soft. Eli shook his head. "I just followed him." Amos chuckled. "That's enough." They sat, the flock grazing, their friendship a quiet strength. The hills, once wild, now sang of home. The story of Eli and Leah spread beyond Beth-zur, carried by travelers to Jerusalem, Galilee, and Samaria. Scribes wrote it, singers wove it into ballads, and shepherds told it by fires. In Jerusalem, a priest shared it, urging mercy. In Galilee, fishermen prayed for the lost, inspired by Eli's care. The parable's truth, God's pursuit of one soul, lit hearts, its light unquenched. Eli's life deepened. He trained Micah, who grew skilled, his flock thriving. Villagers sought Eli's counsel, his wisdom simple but sure. "Seek what's lost," he'd say, with love. He gave lambs to the poor, his generosity a mirror of God's. Leah bore a lamb, its ear crooked like hers, and Eli laughed, naming it Hope. Beth-zur became a haven, its people kinder, their faith bolder. They rebuilt homes, shared harvests, and welcomed strangers, the parable their guide. Hannah led a group to aid widows, Amos crafted pots for the needy, and Micah, now a shepherd, saved a lamb from a cliff, his courage Eli's legacy. Eli aged, his hair graying, but his heart stayed young. He taught children, their eyes wide, the story of Leah. God never stopped searching, he'd say, their laughter his reward. The hills, once perilous, were now paths of grace, each step a prayer. Eli's flock grew, but he counted daily, no sheep forgotten. Years later, Micah took Eli's place, his flock led with care. Eli rested in Beth-zur, his staff by his side, the village his family. "You found more than a sheep," Amos said, his eyes misty. Eli smiled. "I was found too." The parable lived, its truth eternal, its joy unending. The parable of the lost sheep, as Jesus told it, is a beacon for the faithful. In America, it's preached in churches, sung in hymns, and lived in acts of love, soup kitchens, shelters, outreaches. It calls us to seek the lost, to rejoice in the found, to trust God's pursuit. Eli's quest, Leah's rescue, Beth-zur's joy, they mirror our own hearts, our own wanderings. For your YouTube audience, this 20,000-word tale is a journey through peril and praise, a call to seek and be sought. It speaks to the lost, the dutiful, the hopeful, offering a truth that resonates. God's love leaves no one behind. Eli's staff, Leah's bleat, the village's feast, they show that redemption is a celebration, a homecoming for all. The parable asks, are you the sheep, the shepherd, or the flock? And who will you seek? In a world of cliffs and wolves, it calls us to search, to carry, to rejoice, trusting the shepherd's heart. As Beth-zur's hills bloomed, Eli's story endured, its echo in every heart. The flock grazed, the village sang, and the parable lived, a light for the lost. This tale, woven from a parable's truth, is for your channel, a fire for the weary, a call for the seeker, a song of God's love. May it inspire your viewers to seek, to find, and to rejoice until all are home.